Hello everyone. I think either I've introduced myself now or everyone else knows me already, but I'm Nola. I'm at Tufts University and I work on the A&H Academy research communities. So glad you're all able to join us today. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Research Communities Initiative, they're a way for people to come together and discuss similar topics, get feedback, present ongoing research, or present recently published research. And there are very few requirements to present. So if you'd like to present, feel free to email me. I'll put my email in the chat, and get in touch. And we have two research communities. So we have this one on food supply loss and waste, and we have another one on food access and demand for healthy diets. So between the two of them, we cover pretty much the whole range of food system activities. You're able to join both of them, and you can do that on our website. Again, I'll put the link to that in the chat momentarily. Um, in the past, we've had researchers present on their work from all over the world. So from places like Pakistan, Uganda, Vietnam, Nigeria, um, and people presenting all different types of research as well. So anything goes. And if you want to talk about it, feel free to get in touch. And you're also welcome to write a blog for either of these communities as well. Um, so I will, uh, I'm not sure if you're still there. Oh yeah, okay, great. I will pass it over to Ife then to present his work. Thanks so much.
Lovely. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I have to stop sharing. I think I have the wrong slide.
Oh,
Okay,
no problem.
just give me a minute.
I'm just putting all of that info in the chat now.
Okay.
And for those of you who are joining us, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Feel free to say where you're from if you're doing similar research, and feel free to use it throughout the meeting as well. We'll have the 30 minutes of presentation and then 30 minutes of Q&A afterward.
Okay, so I'm trying to open it now. Sorry for the
No problem.
delay. Thank you. Okay, I'll just go ahead with the slide I have. I did a little bit of mo modification in the last minute, but that's fine. Okay, so okay, let me share now. Okay, can you see my slide, please? Lovely. So, thank you very much for coming to my presentation today. I'm going to be presenting part of my doctoral research. Particularly, I'm looking at how social dynamics contribute to persistent food loss in Nigeria. I am currently a doctoral candidate at Justice Liebig University. My doctoral research is funded by the German Academic Exchange Service in the International PhD Program for Agriculture Economics, Bioeconomics, and Sustainable Food Systems. So the presentation is going to be in three phases. I'll start with a systematic literature review, present the findings, and then I proceed to the empirical qualitative research that I conducted. And lastly, the stakeholder engagement that formed the third phase of the presentation or the research. For the context of people that don't uh, to be on the same page with everyone, present I'm using the definition of FAO. Can you still see my slide, please? Okay. I'm using the definition of FAO 2011 as my definition for food loss, which is the decrease in the quantity and the quality of food that is intended to feed humans, but it is omitted or lost before getting to the final consumers due to decision, actions, and practices of different actors within the food supply chain. So, if I say food loss in the context of this presentation, so I'm referring to food that is lost before harvest, or during harvest, or before it leaves the farm to the final consumer. Now, the crop of focus for this presentation, there are basically three, and these crops are selected based on the fact that they are staple foods in Nigeria, and they are uh, at least every household consume this food, and that is rice, maize, and cassava in Nigeria. The context of this study is in Nigeria, not because Nigeria is my beloved country, no, but because there's incidents of food loss in the country based on previous studies and statistics. It ranked among the top 10 worst case study for worst cases for food crisis. Some studies also suggested that out of top 10 case study for food loss, Nigeria ranks among the top 10. And for the focus crop, the focus of the study, which is arable crops, 20% of these arable crops are lost even before the harvest, based on some study. And according to the Federal Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria, they stated that they lose about $9 billion during that period on food loss, which plays significant role in the GDP of the country. So that is why Nigeria is the case study for the study. So I conducted a systematic literature review. The reason being that when I initially started the research, I observed there are limited on studies on food loss, especially at the production stage of the food system. So my plan was to put some of the fragmented studies together and see the direction for the next phase of my research, and which I did. So I published that in 2024. And that is the title Food Loss Analysis in Nigeria, Systematic Literature Review. Now, I had two key findings that I want to present today, which led to the next phase of my presentation. So, the key findings, number one, is the fact that there are three dimensions of the problem leading to food loss in Nigeria. And it is natural causes, material causes, and social causes. So, material causes, we are talking natural causes, pests and diseases, climate change, things like that. Also, material causes, I'm talking about infrastructure, finance, access to land, access to quality plant material, and um, also the social causes, which is not totally popular. I'm talking about competencies and skills of farmers and their limited interaction between farmers and extension agents and other actors like like me, researchers and things, and other actors in the food system or the food supply chain. So the key finding number two is the fact that there are a handful of studies that used qualitative studies to understand some of the perspectives of farmers about the problem of food loss. Which this means that the implication of this is the fact that that means that the intervention around or the policies trying to address the problem of food loss is now embedded in the perception or the insight from the producer. So it could be the reason why the intervention are not effective. So observed this. Most of the studies I use, I saw for the review are quantitative studies. So I think I only out of about 30 studies I used for the review, only about two used qualitative, and the qualitative they are not empirical research. Basically, they are just reviews as well. So those are the two key findings: three dimension to the problem and limited qualitative studies on the problem. So that um, the lack of qualitative study informed the second phase of the research to basically conduct a qualitative um, data gathering using interviews, focus group discussion, observation to answer some three key questions, trying to understand the predominant agricultural challenges based on the perception of the farmer, of the farmers, and also to see um, their farming practices based on the challenges they are facing, and also to see how these farming practices farmers are adopting, how does these practices lead to food loss. So those are the things I'm trying to look at in the empirical research. So like I said, Nigeria is the context of the study, but basically the study area is a state called Ondo State. It's located in the southwestern part of Nigeria, and I specifically used the Akure North local government area of the state. I used the study area basically because of three key reasons. First of all, the the practical reason is the fact that it is based on recommendation from government workers, extension agents. Say, okay, if you want to do this kind of study, this is the place you can go to. That formed the basics. Also, I have experience working there during my master's um, research as well. I used the area, so it was a place I'm familiar with, and I have established a little bit of connection between myself and the stakeholders in the state or in the region. The second reason was scientific based, which is because part of the literature I use for my review, I understand that the study area has a lot of arable crop farmers, and since arable crop farming is the system I'm looking at, it is the perfect place for such study. And the third reason is the fact that there are limited studies on food loss in that area. So I felt, okay, it's a good place to make a difference. So I traveled to Nigeria on the 20 in October 2023 to conduct the empirical study. Basically, in this presentation today, I'm just going to focus on the the focus group discussion that I conducted, and I'm going to be presenting this because the findings are already published as well. So the findings of the focus group discussion was published last year, and um, it's just trying to look at how farming practices inform food loss. I'm going to be presenting now. So the characteristics of the participant, there are just 9 in total, and they had at least 10 years of farming experience trying to grow at least one of these three crop of focus, which is maize, rice, and cassava. And it's also fascinating to also know that the majority of the farmer during the focus group discussion were women, which is quite interesting. Uh, if one of when we asked them, the first question we asked them was, "What is your greatest challenge to contributing to food loss?" And the farmers, they echoed it. They said pest and diseases. And my perception going to the field was the fact that um, technical problem contribute to the to food loss. If you ask an average someone that is not into maybe within the food system, okay, what do you think is the greatest challenge leading to food loss? They will definitely say, in the context of global south now, they'll say technology. But the farmer themselves, they're saying, see, the number one problem we are having is pests and diseases. There is an interaction between us during the focus group discussion, and okay, we were discussing, and a farmer said we are confronted with a pest that damages our maize, such that when we plant and when it is time for the crops to emerge, or even before the crops emerge, the pest invades the maize plant and damages the farm. The pest consumes the leaves and the crops. In agreement, another farmer, two farmers echoed, we also face the same problem. So it is not technology. The farmers are saying this is the problem that is the most priority. So when I say we now, because some of my research assistants are in this meeting today, and I cannot do this research without them, or I cannot talk about research without them. So we visited a farm to some of the farmers gave us the chance to visit their farm to observe what you're doing. And I have a little bit of videos and pictures of some of the things I observed on the farm. So this is a drone observation. Hopefully this plays. Uh, so we visited the farm. The idea of the visit is to observe how the farm looks like. What what kind of farming practices do they do on the farm? And to kind of imagine um, what could be one of the some of the problems or one of the some of the problems leading to food loss. So this is a farmer on the farm, um, and we are there just observing the pattern of the farm. So you can imagine for some of you watching right now, looking at this farm, you could perceive some of the problem or challenges that could lead to food loss, based on pests and diseases that the farmers mentioned, you know. Yeah, so this is a farm. And yeah, hopefully you will have an understanding of what we observe on the farm as well. So I'll move on. Now, based on our observation or my observation, there were about five farming practices that um, this set of farmers are engaging. And although farmers do not pay close attention to these farming practices and their role to food loss, uh, this farming practice has significant role to play in food loss. Okay, I'll start because pests and diseases is the number one problem these farmers are facing. So one of the things that they are so keen on doing is to manage, prevent, and control the pest and disease. So they rely heavily on agrochemicals. This is this is a this is a maize we harvested, and obviously this is not marketable. This is regarded. The farmer said, okay, no, we can't sell this one. This is a loss. So and they explained that it is the pest and disease that affected, that infested the farm, and that means that they can't sell the produce. So, of course, we also asked them, do they know the name of the pest? They don't know the name. They just know that it is a pest. We don't know the name, but the only thing we used to control them is agrochemicals. The second thing is the fact that because farmers are really desperate to control this pest and diseases, they use all kinds of means to source for materials to address the problem. And one of the places they go to source for planting material is the open market, which is not always the best place to do that. I'll give an instance. So we visited this farm, and the farmer said, "Oh, okay, this is in the let me put in a context. This is a maize and cassava mixed farm. So we are supposed to see maize and cassava. So during the observation in the farm, I saw this. I was like, okay, excuse me, sir, what is this? This is not maize, neither this is cassava. So the farmer now explained that, okay, when we were planting, when we were buying the planting materials for to grow um to grow on the farm, so we bought the maize, and when we planted the maize, this is what came out. So this is not maize. So just to give you a context of how farmer procure their input, and for example, now it could be pesticide, because they also complained that the pesticide they buy, they are not effective to address the problem of killing or controlling the pest, and it is because they buy from um, open market, which could be adulterated or not effective. So this is an implication of buying open market. Another example is the method of their planting, weeding, and harvesting, which farmer in their own um, perception, they don't see it as a problem. But during the observation, I want to show you how farmers harvest rice. So this is a rice farm. We are there observing, and I can promise you this is not AI generated videos at all. What I'm presenting to you, this is live. I'm there. So they're harvesting rice. So you can imagine if you have the kind of loss, the potential for loss in this kind of method of harvesting. But farmers don't see, they only see pests and diseases as a critical problem. But from their practices, there are other things leading to that potential leads to food loss. The circularity and repurposing. Okay, so we asked them, okay, for a maize uh, or a tuber that a cassava tuber that is affected by pests and diseases, so that you can't sell them to the market. So what do you do with them? And then they said we dispose them, we just put them back to the field. Nothing. We don't have so farmers don't have a strategic plan to repurpose or to sell um, the um, the the infested crop, which also has an implication on more pests on the farm and food loss. The last one that we observe is the fact that we asked farmer, okay, if you have lot, if you know at the end of the planting season you've harvested, how do you know how much you've lost in the season? The farmer said, we only imagine these things, we don't quantify. So the propensity is the fact that there are higher chances for farmers to, keep doing the same thing over and over again, and then leading to more food loss. So the implication of this I mean, the challenges and the practices on food loss is the fact that I myself, I was struggling to understand it. So I had to go for a training in Greece to understand how some of these practices actually contribute to pre-harvest and post-harvest loss in arable crops. So this is what I found. Let me give you an instance. The continuous use of pesticides, it means that disease pathogen, it means that pathogen, let me describe in layman language. Disease pathogen is the element that causes the diseases, okay? Or the element that attract the pests. So on the field. So if you use more pesticide, so this pathogen, they develop a kind of resistance towards this pathogen. And the more pesticide you use of that kind of product, it becomes ineffective. So which leads to more pests in the field. And another problem of in using pesticides, the fact that okay, farmers want to control pests at all costs. They are really desperate to control these pests and diseases. When then they use more chemicals because they don't know any other means to address the problem. It means that there's a propensity that the soil, the soil, the health of the soil is affected, which means that if the health of the soil is affected, then there are higher chances that the plant or the crop that is grown, it is susceptible to all kinds of diseases, which leads to more diseases on the farm. So, so practices that farmers do not pay at close, that do not think affects create more problem is actually creating more problem on the farm, or potentially. I don't want to be direct right now. Another problem that practices, one of the practices that could potentially lead to food loss is the quantification. And how does this lead to more pest and disease or food loss? When a farmer fails to quantify what is lost, you find it is almost impossible to analyze the what the problem. Okay, for example, you don't know if you don't quantify, you don't know how how many of the crop is affected by this kind of disease or pest. So it gives you a chance to plan for the next season. So the same problem keep repeating itself, and then we keep complaining about pesticide, pest and diseases, climate change things. So it's about sometimes it is about practice and not about the pest or diseases that we are controlling. So I just that's those are the two examples I have. The detail of this one is in the paper, which is in detail. So I felt that it is not going to be too good to have this analysis and this findings about this knowledge gap and some of the practices leading to food loss and just publish it and just leave it there. So I organized a stakeholder engagement, which was actually also funded by the German Academic Exchange Service to go and to do a feedback to the participants of the empirical research. So during my fieldwork, one of the participants told me, "You will collect our data and the necessary information that you need, and you will not show up again." I promised that I would try my best to come back and to tell them what I found. So, uh, I don't know, my slide is not moving. Just give me a minute, a second. Please move. Okay, so I don't want to be like this guy. I don't want to collect the data and run away because most of the time during the data collection, the farmers, the participant, they accused me or accused researchers of just showing up when they need data and just vote. So I wanted to be different in a sense. So I organized a feedback workshop. The essence of the feedback workshop is to achieve two things. First of all, to tell the farmers, to tell the participants about some of the things, some of the practices we found out that could potentially be causing or leading to food loss. And also to also validate some of the results that we found and to put them together. So now we organize the feedback, two feedbacks, one for the farmers group and the other for the policymakers. So to the farmers group now. So the farmers were recruited through the farmers group, and then they were the one that decided the venue, they decided the time, the day, and all we do, myself and my research team, was to be there and to make things happen. So the activities for that day was that we played a video because we gathered some videos during the data collection. So we played the video. The essence of the video was to bring the farmer to bring the farmer closer to the research again, to make them remember what we collected in the first place, and then they will get to know the research even more, or what we found. And then also we invited an agronomist, which is a crop expert, which also means that watching the video means that the agronomist has an understanding of what we did during the data collection, and it was the first thing that we did. Also, the video was also selected for the World Food Day in the Netherlands, which was viewed across the globe at least 1,000 the viewers watch the video. It was really fascinating. So one of the things the agronomy did was that to identify some of the practices from the study, and tell the farmers why and how these practices could potentially be leading to food loss and more food loss on the farm. And I promise you, it was really interesting. So the third activity was to validate some of the things that that I identified during my data collection. So here is the picture. We asked the farmer, okay, with the farmers, we need you to come out and just identify some key things that we are not clear about. I promise you, the farmers said the most place we experience food loss is at the production when the food is about to form. That is the place we experience the most loss. And at harvest, when the food is ready, the crop is ready to go to the market, we lose a lot. And then at maturity, it's just a few, transportation, just a few. This tells us something about the perception of farmers about, see, this is the problem, this is where we are facing the biggest problem. And if you can help us address this problem or this area, then food loss will be reduced. The potential to reduce food loss is really high. And for some people, they always think, oh, it is storage, processing. The farmer don't think, okay, maybe four of them out of about 20. So see, storage is not, if we can harvest correctly, we will scale through the storage and processing stage. So perception of the farmer. So we also ask them, we ask them again, what does food loss mean to you? Most of the farmer, they think about food loss in terms of money. And said, see, if we lose crop, we are losing money. They are not looking at the quality, and if just a few of them also look at the quantity, you know. And but to farmers, lose food loss means loss in investment. Also, we asked them the most critical stakeholder that could play significant role in addressing the problem of food loss. All of them said the government. So they have this level of dependency, hope, and expectation from the government to give them insight, training, capacity building to address the problem. Oh, it's also interesting that the farmers themselves, they are not seeing themselves as a critical stakeholder to address the problem. So that is another knowledge gap or perception that I discovered. We asked them again. The fourth question, the final one, is that which actor do you trust the most to get reliable information about your practices, things you do, and new technology? All 99% said extension. Now, extension means for different contexts, extension means different thing. But extension, they are agricultural extension in Nigeria, we call them agricultural extension agents. So their role is to be the intermediary between the farmer or the rural people and other actors. For example, research institutes. So the role of the extension agent is to train farmers for new technology, improved practices, and then they can then use it to the farmers use them this knowledge to develop their activities or farming practices. So the extension agents they play a significant role in helping farmers boost their productivity. So the farmers themselves, they accept that they are hoping that extension will help them. So initial thoughts from the feedback is that fact that we had good reception. And from what I gathered, that is the very first time a researcher collected their data and showed up again and said, "This is what I found." So they have never seen such gesture before. And they also expressed that it is really unique in the sense that it helps them. It is practical and it is relatable. And bringing an agronomist was the icing on the cake for them because sometimes they don't have access to this kind of knowledge, and which the feedback was really helpful for them. And I tell you for a fact that one of the pointers that I to for me to realize that it was interesting was the fact that The feedback workshop was planned for just 1 hour, but we ended up spending 4 hours because farmers kept on asking questions from myself, from the agronomists. They wanted to know more because it was really interesting. So this is the example of some of the questions we asked them about the evaluation of the feedback. It said most of them said it's very important. It was very important. And then we asked them, how often do you want this kind of knowledge? They want us to come every month. I said I will tell my supervisor if he allows me to do that. So the second phase is that, okay, I put the findings from the empirical studies together, the findings from the feedback workshop with the farmers together, and then I had to disseminate it to representative of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. Tell them, see, this is what we found. This is what farmers are saying, and this is this is where I believe that should be the next phase of action in addressing food loss. It was really fantastic session. We had a lot of discussion around the next phase of things in addressing food loss in Western Nigeria. And we also had an evaluation form for the policymakers. Okay, please, what do you think about this kind of workshop? And they also rated it very important. And they also, for the policymaker, they wanted it quarterly or annually. Unfortunately, I've not yet analyzed the full or to present to you the full analysis of the feedback workshop. But I tell you for a fact that those are some of the things they said. Um, I added a slide about the summary, but unfortunately it disappeared. So I will say it anyway. The summary, in essence, is that food loss, like the general perception that the lack of technology or access of technology amongst arable crop farmers or farmers in global south is the number one reason for food loss. But the study is saying that if we want to develop actionable intervention or solutions to addressing food loss, then we have to look beyond technical problems. We have to look at some of the social dynamic interaction between farmers and other actors in the food system. Also, it is important that some of the findings that we we that is existing on food loss, they need to be translated back to these actors. They need to know where the gap is so that they can address the problem. And mere doing the research and just doing the publication will not be enough to actually address the problem. It will do two things. First of all, it create awareness of practices, of sustainable practices for the farmers. The secondly, for policymakers, it gives them a little bit of direction for the next phase of intervention. I can't do this research without my supervisor. He's a fantastic guy. I used to tell him, Stefan Valen. I want to thank him for giving me, for supporting my idea from the inception. I said, this is what I wanted to do, and he gave me the chance to do my research. DAD funded my research from the beginning to the very end of the field trip for training and every other thing. My program in the University of Gießen, awesome group. I want to thank them for the constant feedback I got. And for the training, some of the trainings I did during this data collection was funded by the cost action of food waste. And I want to thank my research assistants. Some of them are here listening as well. You did a fantastic job, and I can't do this without you guys. Thank you very much for listening and for coming to my presentation. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there so that we can continue the conversation. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Faye. That was terrific. I personally found that the participatory mapping part was incredibly interesting. I hadn't seen something like that, at least presented in this research community. So we'll open up to questions and answers. So please go ahead and unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. And if you're unable to unmute yourself, then feel free to put it in the chat and we'll read it out there. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hello, Ife. I didn't introduce myself in the chat, but I'm Jeff Fogger. I'm with the Agriculture Nutrition Health Academy. Prior to that, I ran a program called the Commonwealth Agricultural Bureau, and spent many years in West Africa and Asia looking at this issue of the failure of extension in agriculture production for poor farmers. Now, that was decades ago, so I'm not up to date, but I think it's a fascinating discovery that you made of how unserviced farmers are in terms of pests and disease issues. And I'm interested to learn more about what extension services existed and how farmers could get access to them. My personal experience was that farmers will, as you say, seek solutions, particularly to pests and diseases in local markets, and usually find, even if they find agrochemicals, there's no guarantee that those agrochemicals are the ones that should be used against those pests and diseases. That seems
Yeah.
to be always a problem. Just an aside for my question, is that what we know about food loss due to pests and diseases? You can read a lot of global estimates. There have been global estimates for years, about 30–40% pre-harvest losses. Unfortunately, virtually all of those estimates are produced by the international agrochemical companies, and therefore it's in their interest to identify that. And the actual food loss is perhaps less, but there are some interesting programs, and I'll pop some information in the chat of some work that we did in the Commonwealth Agricultural Bureau. But my question is, what can you tell us a bit more about the extension system that existed where your farmers are? I mean, were they regularly visited? Did they have to ask for help? And what kinds of extension officers or agronomists would appear?
Yeah. Thank you very much for the insight. Yes, it is a big deal, extension. And it's also interesting that the farmers are really counting on the extension agent because that is the primary source for information. So the interview I did, the third phase of the interview, I mean, of the empirical study, were with other actors and not farmers. So I interviewed the extension agent. And one of the things they told me is that they have one extension officer to 500 farmers.
Mm.
That is that's okay, what they expect. But in reality, one extension services about 3,000 farmers. Yeah, so it is almost impossible for so yeah, it's almost impossible for them to you know to reach all the farmers at the same time. So what the farmers do is that okay, so we ask the farmers, what do you now if you're expecting information from extension and you're not getting, what do you do? So we rely on friends and family. Oh, I have a planting material. I need cassava stem. Oh, I have one. Come and take it. And then that's how they do their thing. And also about agrochemicals, they they instead of extension agents, they also rely on friends and family. I have a problem of this on my farm. Oh, then they tend to uh, permutate and say, okay, if this works for potato, this should also work for maize. And then those are the things they do. Yeah, so, but in reality, one extension is to about 3,000 farmers. Yes, and it's a
Wow,
big problem. Yes, yes.
it's a problem. Thank you.
You're cool.
Go ahead, Greg.
I hope you can hear me okay. Hey, really nice presentation. Thank you so much for that. Really liked the way you had, I think, as Nola was saying, had the feedback session, and that's really, really commendable. I was just wondering, kind of the dissemination, maybe in the other direction. You do have really relevant results, and I appreciate it's not that easy to always get access to decision makers, policy makers at various levels. But I just wondered, do you have any plans in terms of disseminating, say, at the, I don't know, the state level, these kind of important findings?
Yeah, thank you very much, Greg. Do you know what? The plan was to do it in three levels. The farmers to represent the local people, the state, and the federal. And because the farmers they were already expecting me, so it was really easy to say, okay, I'm back with the information. The federal level, I went there. It was really funny that I only interviewed one person during my interview stage at the federal level, only one person, and then I was able to convince the director, this is what I found, and I really want to tell you about this thing. So I told him about a summary of the result. And then it was, to my surprise, they invited different kind of department to join the feedback session because they wanted to know more. Oh, this thing is really interesting. So they invited um, perennial crop analyst instead of arable crop. I said I wanted arable crop department. So they invited them. But the state was really difficult. I was unable. I tried, I tried, I tried. I was unable to reach out to the state agriculture. And meanwhile, that was the how do I put it? I can almost say the nucleus of yeah of information, of change, of intervention. But I promise you, I tried. I did not have a breakthrough.
No, no, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
But no,
thank
really
you.
nice stuff, and congrats on your papers as well. That's
Thank you so much.
really good.
I'm curious how, when you met with the Ministry of Agriculture, how they reacted to the finding that most farmers felt like government had the main responsibility.
Yes, they were not surprised at all. They were not surprised. And one of the most surprising part was the fact that they saw the production stage as the problem. It was like, okay, no, we don't know about the part, but they know that because farmers organization, farmers association used to write to the federal government about we need this kind of intervention, we need, so they know that the farmers are counting on them. And also another interesting part I discovered about the um, from the feedback with the government is the fact that they said, because during the evaluation we asked them if a research findings has informed intervention in the past before, but majority said no. So that means that some of the intervention have not been inspired by evidence from research. So maybe they come up with an idea, oh, the farmer needs it, and then they go ahead. And maybe it could be one of the reasons why intervention has not been effective. But when they saw it, they said, oh, this is a problem. And then they said, if we kind of channel our efforts towards some of the problems that these farmers identified, there are higher chances for them accepting them and then to increase the impact as well.
Super interesting. Thanks.
Welcome.
Go ahead, Catherine, please.
Hi,
I
fellow
hello.
Nigerian. I'm from Kwara State.
Oh, hi,
Yeah,
Catherine.
yeah. So, yeah, I have a couple questions. First one is, do the extension officers, workers typically rely on chemical pesticides and such, or are they trying to utilize more regenerative practices? And should I do one at a time, or do you want both at the same time?
Let me just answer this one, then you go
Yeah.
again. Okay, so one of the things the farmer, um, the government representative asked me is that can you teach us how to use other means? Because they know that pesticide uh, is not sustainable. I mean, yeah, chemicals is no longer sustainable. Environmental is not environmental friendly. So they themselves don't know any other alternative. And it is almost impossible for them to train farmers on alternative practices. So that is what I found. So the only solution or means is use of agrochemicals, which is really popular.
Okay. All
Yes.
right. And then the second question with your findings, the findings that you came back with and shared with them, were there specific steps that they were planning to take or they discussed taking that didn't rely like on the government or anyone else? Like, um, I'm thinking about their agency and what they can do. Were there specific steps they identified that they were going to take?
Yes. For the farmers, one of the things because the expert that I used during the feedback was from the Federal College of Agriculture, which has a department on crop protection, all this thing. So the feedback was a chance for us to build a connection between the farmers group and the institute, and not with the government this time. So, and the shared contact, and hopefully, I believe, I don't want to assume, I believe that it has led to a little bit of connection or partnership between farmers group and the institute now. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I can easily ask more questions, but I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity. If
Okay.
there are other questions, you can put them in the chat or unmute yourself. Okay, well, I'll go in the meantime. But oh no, Greg, go ahead.
You can go first, Noel.
Okay. Well, I'm coming back to that same sort of question about your meeting with the Ministry of Agriculture. And in response to, so they acknowledge the fact that farmers do sort of rely on them and they are aware of this. Do they have many systems in place to support the farmers, or are they planning to implement new systems? Did they seem like they were willing to use, your research to establish some new interventions? Or I know you said that, it didn't look like a lot of the interventions in the past had been based on research, but how did you feel that that conversation went?
Yes. The one of the signs that I saw that made me feel okay, I think this is good, is that they wanted me to come back again. The director asked me, "Can you come back?" I said, "Okay." It's a sign. And it's a little bit complex. Like they used to describe that we used to describe we in the food system. We used to describe food system as a complex system because the director also explained that they need to present some of this idea to other boss. And then the final outcome is a function of a lot of yeses that they get, which makes it more complicated to translate from that feedback into direct impact. So it's going to go through a lot of processes and a lot of channels, and hopefully, yeah, it results to something very soon. Yes.
I was just going to ask if you don't mind. In one of the earliest slides in your presentation, you had about the three-part classification of food loss:
Yeah.
natural, material, social.
Social. Yeah.
Maybe I just need to read your paper, Ife. But to what extent can these categories blur? For example, a farmer's vulnerability to natural is a function of their lack of material, storage, or it was just more of a conceptual question, and I'm not too familiar with that classification, basically.
Yes, it is very true. And the truth is, they are not totally distinct from each other. They're
Mm,
interrelated. Let me give an example. Like I explained the other time, pest and diseases is critical to the farmer. They say, "Oh, I need to solve this problem." Now, if a farmer has access to quality material, which is input, which is, I mean, chemical use, like I said, regenerative means to address the problem, and then that means they can address the problem. And then the social now is the fact that because a farmer wants to address the problem of pests and diseases, if a farmer does not have interaction with extension to get knowledge to address the problem, it persists. So it is interwoven, and it is not totally distinct. In my third paper, that is what I showed actually, Greg. Yeah. You're very right. Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
What next for you?
I didn't get that.
What do you plan to do after your
Oh,
yeah.
what I'm planning to do, my scholarship ends on the 31st of this month, so I have just few days left in Germany. So I'm currently looking for postdoctoral opportunities to advance the research. So hopefully I get one very soon.
Ife, I've added a few things in the chat about something which might be interesting and useful. A review of extension undertaken recently, very new one, about how it works and how it doesn't work and how to improve it. But another one I was going to put in is about, I'm wondering whether you've had anything like farmer field schools operating in your part of Nigeria. This is a methodology that was developed back in the 80s,
Yeah,
which basically helps farmers through a learning process to become experts themselves effectively by doing
yeah,
effectively experiments in their crops. And that's proven to be quite effective, though it was originally
yeah,
developed to get people to stop using pesticides where they were unnecessary. It's been extended into planting, learning about planting material and planting methods. Has that come up in any of your studies, in Nigeria?
yeah. It came up actually. It came up during my interview with one of the extension agent. It was during a school field day.
Mm.
And yeah, so one of the things they do that researchers like me, NGOs used to come around and teach extension agents, then extension agent go and transfer the knowledge to farmers. The issue is the fact that the ratio of the distribution
Mm.
of this knowledge is not even. So because farmer used to wait a long time to get
Mm.
information, they don't count on such training because such training could be once in 6 months, and for farmers the problem is all about now, immediate. I need to solve this pest now. I don't have to wait till the next training. So that is
Yeah,
the issue.
it's
Yeah.
true.
So the training exists, but it is not often.
Farmer field schools, when they work, are actually quite long-term commitments. But the idea is basically to help a farming community understand the problem, and then they can disseminate knowledge and skills and develop them themselves
Yeah.
um, in the community. But single visits just don't work even the training day. So it's a big investment. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering whether it can be made. It's very successful when it works, but it is a big investment. So,
Yeah. I
but
agree. I
there
agree.
are good models for it in parts of Africa and Asia, I know. Yeah. So
Thank
something
you.
maybe for the future. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
But we've just hit the hour. Thank you so much, Ife, for presenting your work and for doing the work. And thank you to all of the research assistants who are on the call as well for the work that you contributed to this, and for everyone participating. I've just put again the link to this event page in the chat. Ife's papers are both linked there, and the recording of this will be up later today. If you ever want to get in touch, the email's in the chat, researchcommunities@tufts.edu. And thank you again, everyone, for joining, and thank you, Ife, especially.
Thank you very much for having me.
You.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.